So, hello, my name is Karen Azer. I'm a board member of the CFA Society of South Carolina, and I'd like to welcome you to this month's edition of Meet a CFA. And one of the objectives of this program is to help people to meet our board members and discover different paths that they take to actually utilize the CFA. And this month we're highlighting Daniel Fetterolf. He was one of our he was our former president, and he's still a board member, and he has taken a non-traditional path to the CFA, which several people do that. And so without further ado, I'd like to pass the baton on to you and tell us a little bit how you got into private wealth management.
Well, thank you very much. And I love that we're doing this. I think it's a great way to connect with all who want to be connected here in South Carolina. And so I am currently a senior portfolio manager at UBS. I joined the CFA board right when I got my charter in 2013. So I was so excited. I was reaching out, telling everybody that I got it. And they instantly said, well, we want to put you to work. So I ran membership for a few years, then I became vice president for a couple of years, and then president for a couple of years, and now I'm in the role of past president on the board. But I did want to share my journey because it's a little bit different than a lot of people have taken into private wealth management, into getting the charter and going through that process. I've lived in this area my whole life. And when I went to college here in town at Bob Jones University, studied a Bible major with a Greek minor, ancient language Greek minor. And then I did master's work in the same. And then I like to tell people, naturally, I got into law enforcement, which is of course not natural, but that's the next thing that I did. So I got into local level law enforcement, was a police officer here in the area, worked the roads, was on our bomb team, was a detective doing investigations. And as I was a little bit or somewhat around 5 years in, I had applications in with the Secret Service and FBI, and then decided I didn't want to just move my family all over the country frequently, as I would probably have to do with either of those organizations. So then I took a step back and I said, what do I want to do with my vocation, with my career path? And I went back to the basics. I read a really good book called 48 Days to the Work You Love by an author, Dan Miller. Mm-hmm. And he recommended considering and focusing on your passions. What are you passionate about? Where are your natural talents and gifts? And then what's just fun for you? And so I was newly married at the time. I wrote down on index cards my passions, my talents, and what was pure fun for me. And then I gave them to my wife. And she took the talent card and crossed off this and crossed off that and crossed off this. And you think you're talented in that, but you're really not. So that was a fun exercise between the two of us. But then it came down to three things: working with people, love people, love interacting with people, people person, doing something that was analytical. And I had both of those in the law enforcement career, doing investigations. But what I didn't have is my love for math. It was interesting. I was actually just this past Saturday at the funeral of my junior high math teacher, who really inspired in me a love for math, just the basics of math. And as it was kind of developing that middle school years and then transitioned me to high school. And it was neat thinking back about how significant he was in my life, that teacher, because he instilled in me a love for math. And so as I started thinking about that, I thought, wow, what career path involves math or numbers, investments, and then people, and doing something analytical. And so I came down with financial advising. And so at that point, I knew I needed to pursue that career path. So was here in the area already, interviewed all the different, a lot of the different firms in the area, met some of the people in the local office here at UBS, and that's the place that I started my career and have been since, and would love for it to continue my whole career. But met some of the people in the office, and they had me go through the interview process, and then took a shot at me. Because I obviously didn't have any of that finance background. Now that was back in the day in 2000, that was back in 2008. So that was back when the world was kind of getting crazy. Not that it's not been crazy over the past year, but it was crazy in the financial industry for sure. So I like to think it was a very good time to get into the field as a financial advisor. Back then, a lot of the companies would hire tons of new people. And then they would start slashing them a couple months in, and then 9 months in, and then a year and a half in, and hardly anybody was left. And that's the environment that I was hired in. There are not as many of those types of programs now. They're a little bit different, where they tried to get you to come in and be teamed up with somebody. The path of success is greater, less cost too for the companies, and it just seems like it's a better fit for everyone. But I got in. I was on my own, and it was just like that. It was intense. 6 months in, half the class was gone. 9 months in, we were down to 25% of the class of 120 across the country. And then a year and a half in, there were 2 of us left, myself and a guy in Baltimore. And he and I had talked every day since we started the program. And I just praise God that he just had that path for me. It wasn't because I was special. It wasn't because I had better talent than anybody. It was just the path he had for me. So, so I call that first stage in wealth management survival stage. It's pretty intense. It's still going to be intense if you go that route today, because you kind of have to earn your keep. You have to go out there. You have to gather the client base. You have to do a lot of the work yourself. You have to put the time commitment in. You have to be willing to, put more time in than the next person. Now, what I did first after becoming an advisor, as far as continuing my education, I pursued the CFA, the CFP program, because it's very applicable to the day-by-day activity of a financial advisor. Very planning-based. A good summary of different topics, retirement, education, insurance, investments, that sort of thing, estate planning. And so also we had an incentive for it too. You got a bonus if you went and got that. So that was another benefit. But I knew all along I wanted to get deeper than that, because I didn't have that educational background that a lot of people have coming into this industry, where they did their degrees, their finance degrees or business degrees in college. I did take a few math courses, some finance courses for fun, just as electives, but it wasn't ever my degree. So I was craving depth. So I got the CFP designation, practitioner designation, and it was great, and it's very applicable to what I do today still. But because of craving that depth, I just went out and searched for programs. I wanted to find a program that would be like the equivalent of me getting a master's degree, but specializing in finance and in the world in which I love, because I wanted to do portfolio management for my clients and really develop that further and just continue to grow. So so then I started that CFA program. I found and talked to a lot of different people who had pursued that, talked to some local people, talked to some people within my firm. And they cautioned me right at the get-go. They said, if you're going to do this, are you married? And I said, yes. Well, then you need to ask permission from your wife, because you're really going to have to make some sacrifices. So no matter where you are in life, it's going to take a good bit of sacrifice, and you want to commit to getting through it. The likelihood is that you won't pass at each stage the first time. So you should have reasonable expectations in that regard. But I started that. I wanted, my goal was to get through that process before my son was 5 and getting involved in sports. And thankfully that worked out. And then, as I said, immediately joined the society as a board member, and have continued to work in this field. So I'd say the first stage in wealth management was just getting in, and having to put in the work. The second stage was getting my designation, CFP, and then CFA. CFA opened up a whole nother opportunity to differentiate myself in the world of private wealth management. There are a lot of CFP practitioners, and that's a very good designation. There are less CFA charter holders in that realm than CFP practitioners. So it was another way to differentiate myself, but also just allow me to work within UBS as a senior portfolio manager here and help care for clients and businesses, and just provide that depth, provide that network. It's an unbelievable network of community, and just to continue to grow, have a group to continue to grow with. You always want to keep on learning, and it's a group that I can be a part of where I can continue to learn. So I'm trying to think if I left anything out there. Why don't I just stop there for now and ask ask you all, if I left anything out in that process that you'd like to hear more about, or we can just kind of go whatever direction you want to go about that specifically, private wealth management and getting in, or stages, or the benefits of certain designations, particularly the CFA, or if you have questions about the program itself or our society.
Well, and I would add one more thing in terms of the kind of access to people you get once you get the CFA. It really does open up your possibility set of places you can go, as well as, the CFA designation is one of the few designations that's recognized around the globe. And so you get access to people in other countries. I was very, very active when I was in Washington State. I was very active in their CFA Society, and I travel around the world. And I was a very active volunteer on their board. And so it's, it's not only at your local level, but it really does open up access to people and just experiences that are second to none. Most people, as Daniel says, it's somewhat of a badge of honor once you get it, because it's not easily attained, but it's completely worth it. And, I got my charter about 25 years ago, and it is, and when I took it, it was, still on paper, and you could only take it once a year. And so almost everybody has to take at least 1 or 2 levels over. So for me, it was a 4-year endeavor.
Yeah, that connectivity is incredible. I mean, you can reach out to anybody anywhere in the world, and they'll normally talk to you if you share that common designation, just because
it opens a lot of doors.
Just a mutual respect. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll hire you on the spot, but they'll talk to you and have a dialogue and be cordial. And then it's just kind of neat to see, with that commonality, how they apply
Yeah, definitely.
what they've learned in their field.
Yeah, I guess what I'm just wondering about is, how do you actually get good at doing this stuff? Like, is there like something that you need to really focus on more than something else, or is there like a required skills that you need, like things that you do more often, like what's more important in the CFA program that you need to carry forward to make life easier in the career setting or whatever?
Yeah, and are you speaking more about the actual test 1, test 2, test 3 type thing?
I think more about the
prep
career
work,
more about the actual the wealth management type thing, more of what you do every day, yeah, and just most important skills that you need to bring to the table when you're working.
Yeah, well, you definitely don't want to be a burner of bridges, I can tell you that. You want to connect well with people and have good relationships and be a good networker. character and integrity is vital, and ethics. So you want to make sure you treat everybody with respect, and because there will be many opportunities that you don't see, that you can't anticipate that you would have 5 years, 10 years down the road, but they'll come back to you.
Yeah,
I
that's one piece of career advice I had early on. It's like, treat everybody you meet as a potential partner.
Yes, yeah, very good advice. Time management is a must. We had this, and they don't do this anymore, but when I was interviewing, I got through a few different steps, some testing that they had me do, and then one of the final steps was a day in the life of an advisor mock scenario, and it was an amazing couple hours where you sat at a desk here in the office. In fact, I think I was in this very office. It was vacant at the time. And they would call you. You would get emails. You would have trades that you had to put in. You would have to determine whether or not, what you should respond to, what you should prioritize, how you should take care of things. And it was a perfect example of what this work was. It can be very fast paced, but it has to be detail oriented. So you've got to put the amount of quality time in that's needed, but balancing that time is very critical. Not wasting your time. At the early stages, you need to make sure you are not giving yourself a false sense of security. You need to make sure that you're really holding yourself to a certain standard to be productive. Otherwise, you won't survive. And so you're doing very productive activities to determine, who can become potential clients and that sort of thing. So time efficiency, I would say. What else do you think?
Well, and also passion. Passion is probably number one. If you're not passionate about it, this isn't an easy business.
Right.
And unless you're passionate about it, it's I used to read prospectuses on my train ride home. That's what you do. A lot of very early on, you're reading annual reports, you're doing that sort of thing. Even it's certainly not a 9-to-5 job.
No, not at all. I looked for the guy in the office from day one who worked harder and longer than everybody else, and I made sure that I worked harder and longer than him. And I did that for 5 years. And and I frankly, I still work pretty hard. I was here till 3:30 this morning.
Oh, wow.
In the office. So, there are times where you just have to do it. You care for these people, you care for these clients. There's only so much time in the day, and sometimes you just got to put the hours in. Now that's not every day. One night a week I'll work late, but it's definitely not a 9-to-5 type job.
Yeah, and that's why the passion's important, because if you're not committed to that, you get burnt out pretty quickly. And
yeah, for sure.
When you were talking about those stats earlier with those programs, that's usually, half the people who don't make it just realize this is a lot bigger. You see the movies about what it's like to be a stockbroker and living the life. Well, that's the Hollywood version of it. That's
right.
That's not, the late nights, as you said, eating takeout at, 7:00 in your office again.
Yeah. It's a wonderful career. It's a very beneficial career. You never want to be a servant of money, I like to tell people, because that can be fleeting. So don't serve that, but serve, follow after what you're passionate about, for sure. And that really helps.
Yeah, and even going through that exercise that that Daniel talked about earlier, about going through those different passions and going through, is this the place that I really want to be? And if not, find that place, because when, God created all of us with a purpose. And when you're walking in alignment with that, things fall into place. And so follow that passion in your heart, and things will be much more enjoyable.
Yeah. And I think if somebody wants to get in this day and age, they need to make sure they're networking, and probably networking with numerous people in the line of work that they're considering. It may not turn into anything right away, but it may be 2 years from now, 5 years from now. But you got to be networking, because the most of the firms, I believe, are going towards more of a model where you bring somebody in on a team,
Right.
and you commit to them, and you've already got somewhat of a trust relationship with them, and you feel like it's going to be a good fit already before you even hire them. But that's because you've networked, you've been in conversations, you've had coffee, you've had lunch, you've had a dialogue on LinkedIn and email and over the phone and that sort of thing, and you just really have connected.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree with that 100%.
And there are many different channels. There are bank channels, and that's an important channel. There's independent channels. There's the broker channel, or wealth management channel, I should say. So they're all different channels.
And there's corporate finance. There's always that option as well.
Yeah,
That's a
sure.
different route as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was important that I could be a consultant, non-proprietary consultant, not selling my own company's stuff. And that was just really important for me. And so you got to find out, what's important for you in those job opportunities. What on the wealth management side, typically it's going to be more about going out and getting your own business. And some other sides, there may be some stuff fed to you through a banking channel. There's different upsides depending on where you go, but most of it is what you make of it.
And I just like I think what draws me to it is just the challenge. I like challenge myself with difficult things. Like the other day I was fasting for 42 hours just because I watched some YouTube video. Yeah. So like I just like I'll do things like that. One time I started running and then I just ended up like doing 10 miles. So sometimes like that's what draws me to the CFA program, is just because it's just so difficult and there's so much,
Yeah, you've got to have the self-drive to be in this
Yeah.
business. You've got to have the self-drive to get through the program. I say the same thing for the program. I looked at the average amount of hours that people spent on the program, each level, and I decided I'd study more. So I got my notebook and I would put little ticks for every hour that I studied. And I think I've still actually got some of those. But I made sure that I was going to put in those hours. I blocked off my calendar to make sure I was going to get those quantity of hours, because I knew if I got more hours studied than the average person, then I had a higher probability of passing, or at least I felt like I was giving myself an unfair advantage by, not unfair, but giving myself an advantage that way. And it worked out. But you got to put the time in. You got to put raw time in.
Go ahead.
Yep. When I was what I've noticed is the level of focus you're putting in, and what I found is when it's something that like requires like a lot of focus, it's a lot harder for me to get into it. But if it's something like that I can just like read through, then I can put in like more hours. I was just wondering like about like you're talking about like the amount of hours you're putting in, but then there's also that focus factor. And I was just really wondering like if there was like a trick to really being like in depth into it. That's, I guess that falls into the passion thing.
That's a good question. What I did was I did use Kaplan for all of the levels. And so they have a Q bank or question bank. And so I found that to just get me out of the one mode when I got worn out with it and tired, and go to the question mode and basically just pepper myself with questions. And I would go back and forth between those two. And then there was some video modes as well, where I was watching a video. So I'd do some reading. I think it's very important to use the CFA curriculum, because that's where they're getting their tests. So you don't ever want to use a third party solely, you
Hmm.
want to always prioritize the CFA curriculum, but use those others as supplemental, use them for a change of pace. But I found, doing questions was very, very helpful and useful for
And
me
for
to,
me, creating, I created note cards. That was, for me, that was something, because just the way I process as well is, writing down the answers myself, and you'll learn acronyms and do things like that as well to learn a lot of those concepts.
yeah.
But I would encourage you, James, just to, since you're very early on in this process, I definitely encourage you to reach out to some of those other channels as well, especially since you have moved down from the north and trying to make some contacts, reach out to the bankers, reach out to some of those other channels and start connecting. And, you can start on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know I definitely got to spruce up my LinkedIn account. So that's definitely something I got to do along with studying and everything.
Yeah, our membership, we've got about a third of our CFA charter holders in Charleston, a third in Columbia, and a third up in Greenville. So you've got a good crew of people down there too, if you ever want to get connected. And
Yeah.
we have periodic events. We have a different memberships, that you can participate in. So you don't have to be a charter holder to be a member. So you can do like a local only membership, and be a part of our local membership, so you can come to any of our events. Hopefully we'll get back to the in-person events soon, and those are really nice for
Definitely.
networking reasons, for sure. But
Yeah, I
we,
definitely want to get like in touch with like people that are in the field and the CFA holders and finance professionals, just to be around people that like kind of have the same goals and the same they want to grow in the same direction as I do. They actually know like what I'm talking about, if I'm talking about like the stock market or the CFA program, the CFA charter. It would be nice.
Yeah.
So
And we have lots of other, and we have other educational programs as well. We don't have this program, but I'm assuming now that you've registered for this, you'll be on the mailing list now, so you'll be able to sign up for those periodic events that come up as well, just to learn more about the industry.
Oh, excellent.
So, well, I think it's time to wrap this up, but I'd like to thank you for coming, James, for this, and for those others that are listening to this as a recording. Thank you so much for coming and learning more about this. And thank you, Daniel, so much for sharing your story. It was invaluable. And I think there are a lot of lessons for a lot of people to learn from your experiences.
Thank you, Karen.
You are welcome. And we look forward to seeing you guys next month.
All right. See you, James.
All right. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.